If you're a big fan of fighting games, or maybe you just enjoy video games overall, you're probably aware that every single year, the same discussion rises online. Why are fighting games not bigger and more popular? And I feel like I am on a very unique position to discuss this topic because not only I've been a huge fan of fighting games all my life, going from a very casual player as a kid and teenager into a now more hardcore fan as a content creator, but simultaneously I'm a psychologist and I'm specialized in the business and management area. So I really feel like I can give a unique take as a long-time consumer that also maybe understands the business side of fighting games and video games overall a little bit more critically. So let's get into why maybe people are not able to get into fighting games. And to start the discussion and really put it into perspective, I think that we need to take two big ideas and make them face each other. The first one is, why do people get into video games? So what is the overarching goal of playing video games as a form of media? And the second one is, what does the fighting game genre and the products that it has to offer actually do to help people achieve that goal? And well, if we take a look at that first idea, it is very obvious that the answer is that most people engage with video games as a form of leisure. They use it to entertain themselves, have some fun, relax, and maybe catch up with some friends online, and that's kind of it. And as a psychologist, I would also argue that there is another big pool of people that use video games as a form of psychological escape to maybe try to deal with the biggest stressful events of their daily lives. But if we take that into account, if we take those two big motivations to play video games, then do we really think that fighting games are making a good job at trying to help people achieve any of those goals? I would say hell nah, man. Like, fighting games overall have been struggling to help people achieve any of those two things in a long time. And relevant disclaimer, when I say this, I'm talking about new people that have not played fighting games before, not veterans or big legacy players. And right here at this exact point is where I would say things go to hell. It's the moment in which developers and also some fighting game fans kind of get their mind twisted and misjudge what it is that you need to do with fighting games as a video game genre and change about them to actually convince newcomers to get into them. And the reason why I'm saying this is because if we're super honest about it, the biggest change in fighting games in the last 10 to 15 years, outside of rollback netcode and better net play, has been giving people accessibility at the lowest levels of play to enjoy fighting games gameplay wise. Most fighting games nowadays have whatever mechanic or specific feature in their controls to make it easier for people to get into them. We have nowadays games that have auto combos, games that also have special moves with no motion inputs, and more stuff that basically is an effort from developers to make the accessibility to gameplay at the lowest levels of play much higher. And I think that this is good. I think that the work that they've been done around this is excellent. But the problem is that they did this without giving people any context in which they can enjoy your game while being bad at it. Let's say that you want to get into car racing and you go into a competition in which you know that every single beginner can use automatic cars, but the other people that are more experienced have to use manual cars. Do you think that you're still gonna have any opportunity and you're not gonna end last, while also being remembered constantly that you suck at it and you need to put a ton of time into it to even get close to who is on top 3 on that competition? So in that sense, like, we can make gameplay more accessible. It's a great way to kind of cut the barrier to get into the games, but it doesn't matter if there's no space in which we can have fun and enjoy the game while we suck at it. And oh, what a surprise! The most successful and biggest fighting game of the last generation is the one that offers newcomers the most environments in which they can engage with the game and have fun while they're very bad at it. And then maybe over time, after enjoying World Tour, after enjoying avatar battles, you're gonna think, oh, this fighting game thing is kind of sick, maybe I should actually get good at these games. And the most ironic thing to me is that there is actually a lot of older fighting games that did a great job at helping people have fun with the game without needing to get good at it. For example, Soul Calibur 3, Tekken 5, even the Street Fighter Alpha series, you could argue, and a lot of people remember those games because they were very feature rich and had a ton of both single player content and a relatively casual experience in it to help people ease into the fighting game experience. So, should we make fighting games easier? Maybe, but the real goal should be, we need to make fighting games fun. even when we are not good at them. Hey, just in case that you've been enjoying the content until now, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to support the channel. If you like fighting game content, you're probably gonna like this YouTube channel, and thank you for the support, I appreciate it. And now let's continue. And well, okay, now we can move into the second point of discussion in the video, and even though it is closely related to the first one, I would argue that it deserves its own space, and it is about what I would like to call the power levels of audience pool that fighting games have. When we think about video games, overall, there's a lot of genres out there. And there are some genres that have a much higher power level when it comes to pulling an audience. For example, first-person shooters tend to have very big mass audiences, but fighting games don't necessarily have that same level of power to pull a big audience. And in that sense, a lot of the time fighting games actually have to be a much better product than an actual first-person shooter game to pull even a similar amount of people into the game. And I would say that even though fighting games in the last years have been more successful and are kind of on a big comeback as a genre, there is still, I would argue, a low power level genre of video games when it comes to audience pool. And what is the industry doing? This is very interesting. What is the industry and the business of fighting games doing to actually make that power level of audience pool much higher? They are constantly using external IPs. They are using intellectual properties that are extremely popular to actually pull people into fighting games and make them experience them almost like an action game. For example, when we think of a game like Granblue Fighters, a lot of people got into DBFZ as their first fighting game ever, and maybe only played that one actually because they initially experienced the game kind of like an action game. They played a game with simplified controls, just mash some buttons, saw very good graphics and cinematics, and play story mode, maybe a little bit of online, and then they never played again, or maybe they got hooked up and actually started to care about fighting games. But they initially got into it because they were highly likely fans of Dragon Ball. That was the biggest reason as to why they bought it and why they wanted to play it, alongside, I would argue, the graphical quality of the game. So in that sense, I think that fighting games have not been able to kind of redefine themselves as a product to actually have a higher power level of audience pool outside of using external properties. And the reason why this is so relevant and it is connected to the first point is because I think that many developers are using external properties kind of as an excuse to make their games worse as a product and not suffer from it. They are trying to use the power of that IP that is gonna pull a lot of people into the game to actually make the game relatively mediocre and then sell it and do well anyway. And I think that the biggest flop of the last years, that is a big example of this, and the game actually suffered a ton because of it, is the Hunter x Hunter fighting game. We all know that it is a big anime that has a big pool of people that are gonna play maybe any video game that has that IP into it, but the game didn't do that well at all because it was visually unappealing, and it was also very lacking on overall game modes and features to enjoy the game. So in that sense, I think that there's gonna be a big crisis in the fighting game genre overall in the upcoming years if developers and companies don't worry about making their fighting games a much better product overall that is a sustainable fun experience over time, instead of depending so much on external intellectual properties. And then just to close out this point with a key detail that I know a lot of people are not gonna like, but it is extremely relevant. The only way to make fighting games a sustainable business and product over time, if companies don't make them better, if they are not actually AAA premium video game experience that you play $70–80 for at launch, the only other route is making fighting games free to play. And I know that there is a lot of people that don't like that idea, but at the end of the day, fighting games already kind of work like free-to-play games. Most fighting games out there already work like a live service video game. They already have seasons, new updates with each whatever DLC and all that. It's just that they actually charge you instead of being free-to-play. So don't be surprised if from here to 20–30 years, the industry doesn't want to evolve and fighting games are still incredibly mediocre products overall that are not that feature-rich and don't really offer a premium video game experience. They're gonna be free to play because it's gonna be the only excuse to monetize them in the most and big possible way, while also offering a game that maybe doesn't really do that much, with the excuse that you can play it for free. And well, before the video ends, I just want to make like a section of closing thoughts because I want to be fair with all the arguments that I said on the video and make them as clear as possible. I'm being super tough, during the video, trying to be clear about why it is I believe that fighting games are not bigger and more popular, but there is obviously a lot of nuance into these arguments. Like when I say that fighting games are not necessarily worth, 70, 80 bucks when they come out as products, sometimes it's true, but also other developers and some modern games like Street Fighter 6 did an amazing job in actually being more feature rich, in actually giving people stuff to do in their games that is high quality and that is deserving of your money. So I'm not saying this kind of like an ultimatum, or I'm not trying to be like excessively negative and say that all fighting games are trash. No, like that is not the idea. I just wanted to be very clear on what, the initial arguments were so that it was very obvious what I meant when I talk about them, but there is a lot of gray. It's not that black and white or anything like that. And also, there are some games that actually do a much better job of introducing beginners in terms of their onboarding process than other ones. Street Fighter 6, again, another good example, like World Tour, Avatar Battles, the lobbies, essentially all the big features in the game help people to ease into the fighting game experience and not die in the first step that they take because they start to get wrecked online right away by better players. So I just wanted to make that clear, like there is a lot of gray, a lot of nuance in the discussion, and this video, if I tried to be as excessively precise as possible, would be like a 40-minute discussion because it is a much more complex topic that some people think, both in the business side of fighting games as a product overall, and also in what do you do with the games to actually make them better products, sell them, make them more appealing to a bigger audience, and what are the changes that the genre needs so that people actually put money into these games and get excited for them and try them out even if they have never played any fighting game before. And then last but not least, there is obviously more factors and more variables as to why fighting games are not as popular that I haven't mentioned in the video yet. We can go over them very quickly. Like for example, the difficulty of the genre is always going to be a debate. Like fighting games are hard. They are hard to get into, and that is fine, and I don't think that that is the main reason why people don't play them. To be honest, I think that is much more connected with the fact that there is not a healthy environment to have fun with these games when you're bad at them, like I said in the first argument. And then there's other things that you could argue against, like for example, the pricing of fighting games is extremely high. Like if you want to buy a fighting game at launch and then buy all the DLC and whatever, you may use like $200 on a game over the span of 4 to 5 years, which is absolutely crazy when you compare it to other games that are incredibly high quality products that offer so much for only the launch price, $60 and that's it. And then maybe you can even buy them on, discount later down the line. For example, I paid like $9 for Resident Evil 4 Remake, and it's one of the best games I've ever played. And that doesn't mean that fighting games should maybe compete with the same kind of like financial model, but you get the idea. And also, like, I would argue another big thing that maybe not many people discuss about is that there's still a lot of like gatekeeping, I would say, online in the fighting game community. Like there's still a ton of people that see whatever person online that is trying to get into the games and it's like, oh, you're using auto combos or you're playing with like modern controls, whatever, you should not play this game, your ass, and leave this game, like go play something else, I don't want you here. And even though I know that is a minority, I just want to say that there's a lot of loud minorities in the FGC that are not that positive, okay? And of course, that is not something we have control over, but it can be something maybe relevant over time. And again, this, last topics that I'm talking about more quickly in this section, I think they are relevant, but not as important as the two main arguments that I presented on the video. So if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to support the channel. I cover a ton of different content on fighting games. I would appreciate your support, and let me know in the comments what you think about this topic. Why are fighting games not more popular? What is holding them back? And I wish you a great day. See you on the next one. Take care.